How's it going, guys? It's Billy here, and in today's video we're going to be kind of continuing off where we left off. Not so much as leaving off, as kind of continuing a series that I somewhat started back in December by building a brand new and different PC per month in that kind of theoretical build rather than me physically getting it, because as I mentioned in that video, it can get pretty expensive. So if you guys want to know what it's all about, I'll be leaving it up here in the card above. I'll also leave a link in the description below if you guys want to see it. It was a $500 gaming PC, kind of more of a budget build and oriented one, just so you can get in on that 1080p gaming goodness. So this video is going to be very similar to that in that I'm going to be suggesting certain parts on building a $950 gaming PC that'll do phenomenally at 1080p. We're talking all the settings cranked all the way up, and it'll perform very well in 1440p as well. Not only that, but this kind of system will also have the benefit of being able to do many other things, because we're going to get to it in a moment. It is a true quad core rather than a dual core with hyper threading pretending to be its 4 cores. Like the 4 threads will pretend they're 4 cores, but they're truly not, because in a lot of applications there isn't a substitute for a true quad core. So guys, let's get right into it, and we got to start off with the processor, because being the brains of the computer, this is probably going to be the thing that defines the price point the most and kind of the trajectory that we're going to be taking this build. We're starting this one off with the Intel Core i5-6500. So you heard me correctly, this isn't the K version. See, the K version, the closest that you're gonna get is the 6600K, and that's an additional $50 adding to the price point. That's quite a little bit of a jump here, and in this particular build, we're not gonna be overclocking. In this particular scenario, it's not gonna be super helpful, but if you're gonna be spending that extra $50, I would go something up to the 6600K or the KB Lake equivalent, which would be the 7600K. Now, the 6500 also has a KB Lake equivalent, the 7500, which enjoys a little bit of a spec pump in terms of the base frequency. It's at 3.4 gigahertz rather than 3.2, and it boosts up to 3.8 rather than this one that boosts up to 3.6 gigahertz. Now that's all speculative if you're able to actually find one for the same amount of price. I'm going with what I find over here, and this one's $188, so I think that's a pretty good bargain for a true quad core that turbos up to 3.6, but if you can find the KB Lake requirement, then I would go with that one instead. Or if you can pony up the extra $50, I would go with the 6600K if you want to get into overclocking and you want to learn more about it, or the 7600K if you want to get the KB Lake version. Now that's the thing that's going to be coming up next. Kind of both of them have to do with it. It's both going to be the CPU cooler and the motherboard. So for this particular one, for the price point of around $100, even though we're not going to be overclocking, I am still picking a Z170 board, or rather Z. I'm Canadian. I don't know. I hear Z so much because I hear a lot of American YouTubers. But the Z170 chipset allows you to actually overclock the Intel CPUs. But in this case, we're not going to be using it because it's not a K SKU. But for $100, I'm like, why not just get this one? This one has like 4 DIMM slots for the RAM, so you have future upgradability in that. And also, instead, if you do want to get the 6600K or another unlocked K variant, this one will work as well. But just one key thing to note is that, especially with the new KB Lake ones, you might need to get a newer board for it, meaning that there usually are BIOS updates to allow the newer processors to work, but if they don't come straight from the factory, sometimes you'll need to use one of the older processors in there to first upgrade the BIOS and then install the new processors into them. So if you are going to be going with the new KB Lake ones and you want to make sure that you're guaranteed that it's going to be working with the KB Lake version of any of the processors, be sure to get the Z270 chipset instead, or the equivalent of it, so it's actually BIOS ready, because this one might not be. And as I mentioned, since this is a Z170 chipset board, the one that we decided to go with was the MSI Z170M. It is a micro ATX motherboard, but in this case it doesn't really matter. It's going to have at least one PCI X16 slot for us to be able to put our graphics card in, and it also has 4 DIMM slots at around $105 for a motherboard. I think it's pretty good with good expandability options as well, so that's why I decided to go with this one, but it's all up to your preference. I've used MSI products in the past before. They've worked out very well for me. Maybe you didn't have a good experience, and that's up to you, but choosing something around that $105 mark, that will be completely up to you. Now, since we're going to be keeping this thing at stock because we don't really have any overclockability options with it, you can stay with the stock cooler if you want, or you can spring for around $30 and get something like the CryoRig H7. Personally, the stock cooler does a decent enough job, but I always like to use aftermarket coolers myself to keep noise levels down. Usually they're a little bit quieter than the stock Intel fan, and also I like to keep my processors running a little bit cooler if possible as well. And you'll especially need an aftermarket one if you decide to get the K SKU and overclock your chip. Now next up, let's get into the memory. We're talking about the RAM over here, and we decided to go with a pair of G.Skill Ripjaws 4 series 16 gigabytes. That's 2 sticks of 8 gigabytes of RAM. That's DDR4 RAM clocked in at 300 megahertz. So I decided to go with the absolute maximum because this board allows at least that kind of memory timing to be used with the XMP profiles. So for 85 bucks, you can't go wrong with a dual channel. So it's going to be running two 8GB sticks, and there's also going to be 2 free DIMM slots afterwards in the future if you guys want to throw in another 216, making this 32 gigabytes in total. But as of now, this main function is a gaming PC. And for now, gaming doesn't really require more than 16 gigabytes. You do see a lot of diminishing returns going further than 16 gigabytes. But if you're doing other applications that do require that amount of memory, then go ahead and get more. But for where we're at right now in terms of gaming, and especially 1080p gaming, 1440p gaming, 16 gigabytes of RAM is going to be more than enough. And as we mentioned, since the primary focus of this PC is going to be gaming, we're decided to go with the XFX Radeon RX 480, the 4GB version. So if you guys want to spring up for the little bit extra bit of money, so right now this model over here, the 4GB is $199, so 200 bucks. You can also get the 8GB variant afterwards. So if you're running into more 1440p rather than 1080p, you'll want that extra VRAM for those resolutions. Or if you want to get the 6GB version of the GTX 1060, that's another option as well. This all really depends on your comfortability, where you want to spend a little bit more money. And generally when we're talking about a gaming PC, the GPU, the graphics processing unit, that's where we want to be spending the bulk of the money, because the video card is going to be doing the bulk of the processing. You also want to pair that with a good CPU, and I think this pairing will do very, very well at 1080p gaming and 1440p gaming. Now we also got to talk about storage. Now hopefully you have some sort of bigger traditional, 7200 RPM drive laying around, 1 terabyte, 2 terabyte, whatever. Or you could just, crack one open that you have like a portable one. You can always use those there. They're always like SATA powered anyway. But I decided to at least house our operating system and all of our games. I decided to go with a 480 gigabyte SanDisk SSD Plus. So that's a $112 SSD that, it's almost 500 gigabytes. That should fit the OS comfortably, and a select few games that you want to run a little bit quicker, or maybe you have a few games in your library that you like to run at the same time. This will be more than enough to fit all of that and of your applications. And then if you want to have an extra 1 terabyte or 2 terabyte on the side, add like about $80 or $90 or $100 to this build to get that if you don't already have one laying around in your house somewhere. So what's going to be powering this behemoth? So according to PCPartPicker, this build shouldn't be using more than 300 watts or so. So this 650 watt EVGA 80 plus gold certified semi-modular PSU is going to do the job splendidly. I've used EVGA power supplies in the past. They work really wonderful for me. And I like to go at least semi-modular at the very least, if not full modular if possible, just because I hate having all of those extra cables. And in this case, it's not going to be a big deal, and we'll get to that in a moment because it does have good cable management. But I like to at least have semi-modular or fully modular and only really use the cables that I really need. So I decided to go with this one. I've used EVGA power supplies in the past. This one over here is really, really good, and it's only 75 bucks. Now, certainly last but not least, and also probably the most subjective thing of all besides the video card, I would say it's the case. Now, I'm spending $65 on this case. You guys can spend more, you guys can spend less. You guys can see the feature sets and other reviews out there of which ones you might prefer. But I decided to go with the NZXT S340. This is the black and red version you can get. There's also white. There's also just a pure gloss black one instead. You guys can pick whichever one you want. Like I said, this one's purely subjective, but I've used this case in the past. I really like the aesthetics of it. I really like the price point that it's at. I like its feature sets. So that's why I decided to house all of this within there. But as I previously mentioned, guys, this is all up to you and your personal preference for it. But I think for around $950, excluding tax and excluding an operating system, I think this is a pretty solid build overall. But let me know what you guys think about it in the comment section below. What do you guys think I could have improved upon in order to kind of keep it around that $950 price? And what would you guys do differently instead? Be sure to let me know in the comment section below. So if you guys enjoyed this video, be sure to press that thumbs up button on the video. And if you enjoyed it and like to see more, be sure to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out on any future content. But if you didn't, be sure to hit that thumbs down button instead. And be sure to let me know how I could have improved this video by leaving a suggestion in the comment section below. Either way though, guys, thank you very, very much for watching today's video, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. See you later.